My name is Casey Langston, and the moment I sold my parents' home out from under them, while they stood on the lawn with boxes in their arms and nowhere to go, I didn't flinch. Not even when my sister Michelle screamed that I was destroying the family. Because family doesn't leave your kids eating on the floor like animals while theirs dine at the table. Before I tell you how we got here, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you've ever had to teach your own family a lesson in respect, this one's for you. The story begins. It was a Thursday evening in March, and everything was chaos inside and out. Rain slapped against the kitchen windows, the clock was racing past 6, and I was still trying to wrestle my youngest into clean socks while reheating spaghetti for the third time. My heels were already on, makeup half set, and the presentation slides I'd spent 2 weeks polishing were queued on my laptop by the front door. This dinner wasn't optional. It was the kind of night that decided whether you stayed at the table in corporate strategy or got quietly replaced by a younger, hungrier version of yourself. I needed one thing, just one. Please, I said, swallowing my pride for what felt like the 100th time. Just for a couple of hours. I'll be back before 10. They're already fed and in pajamas. I stood in the living room, arms crossed over my blazer, facing the two people who should have been my softest place to land, my parents, Roger and Janet Bitkeys. Both sat on the couch like they hadn't heard me, but I knew they had. My father finally lowered the TV volume. You expect us to watch someone else's brats, I blinked. They're not someone else's, they're mine, your grandchildren. He waved a hand like I'd interrupted a commercial break. Same thing, we didn't sign up for this. You chose to have kids, Casey, that's your problem. Across the room, Michelle exhaled a sharp laugh. Maybe next time you'll pick a man who doesn't bail on you the moment diapers get real. Michelle, my younger sister. She was sprawled across the recliner like some smirking queen, sipping rosé at 6:30 in sweatpants that cost more than my work blazer. Her twin boys were at home with a nanny she insisted she hated, but kept on payroll anyway. I ignored her. Turned back to my mother, who hadn't said a word yet. Mom, please, it's just one night, one dinner. Janet sighed, a long, theatrical breath that could have earned her an Emmy. We're too old for this nonsense. Do you know how tired I am by 6 o'clock? She said, pressing her hand to her temple like my request was giving her a migraine. They'll just sit on the couch with their tablets, I tried. They don't need anything except someone in the house in case, my father cut me off. So you want us to babysit like some broke teenage neighbors while you go off playing boss lady at a steakhouse? No, I want you to be grandparents for one evening, I snapped. My voice cracked at the edges, rage pushing through the exhaustion. Michelle didn't miss that. She tilted her head, grin sharpening. You know, Casey, maybe if you stopped acting like you're the only one in this family with real responsibilities. I'm not doing this with you, I said quickly, before she could build steam. I walked down the hall and called for the kids. Come on, shoes on, mommy has to go. They came out obediently, backpacks on, quiet, too quiet. My daughter had heard every word. I could tell from the way she clutched her stuffed elephant a little tighter. I crouched down, smiled as best I could. Mommy loves you both, okay? Be good. Grandma and Grandpa are going to hang out with you for a little bit. We're not doing snacks, Janet muttered as she passed through the hall behind me. Last time they left crumbs on the rug. My throat tightened, but I kissed both my children on their foreheads, trying not to let the shame leak into my voice. I'll be back before you're asleep. Michelle twirled the wine glass in her hand. Hope your little pitch is worth it. I opened the front door. The rain hit my face like a slap, but I welcomed the cold. It was better than the heat crawling up my neck. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw Michelle through the front window, feet up, phone out, laughing at something on the screen. My kids stood behind the curtain. Watching. I don't think they waved. I didn't either. That night, as I drove toward downtown with the windshield wipers dragging across the glass like a metronome of every bad choice I'd made in trusting my family, I made a vow. This was the last time anyone in that house treated my children like second-class burdens. The rain softened as I pulled onto the freeway, but my mind was still thundering. The lights of the city flickered on wet pavement like broken promises. Towering office buildings, half-lit windows, the glow of headlights rushing by, I used to find comfort in the rhythm of it all. Tonight it just felt cold. I had 25 minutes before dinner. Enough time to rehearse my pitch, collect my thoughts, maybe call Maya for a pep talk. Instead, I drove in silence. One hand on the wheel. one hand gripping the steering column like it could anchor me through the undertow building in my chest. "They can't watch my kids for one night," I whispered aloud. Just hearing the words made my stomach twist. Not even one night. 10 years. That's how long it had been since I started helping them financially. Quietly. Consistently. Always without being asked, but also never being thanked. When Michelle's boutique went under, I covered her rent for 4 months so she wouldn't lose face. When Dad's old truck finally died, I made the down payment on his new one. When the bank threatened foreclosure on their house during the 2020 mess, I wrote a check so fast my hand cramped. And they knew, of course they knew. They just conveniently forgot. Like memory loss was genetic in our family, but only when it came to gratitude. I merged into the left lane and let out a hollow laugh. I remembered the day I wired them $7,200 to keep their mortgage afloat. Mom cried on the phone. "You saved us," she said. "We'll never forget this." Except they did, they forgot. Or they rewrote the narrative so I was just fulfilling some invisible daughter debt that never ends. A debt they think Michelle doesn't owe because she's still figuring things out. I reached into the cup holder and took a sip of lukewarm coffee. It tasted burnt, or maybe I was just bitter. Michelle had failed upward her whole life. First it was the Etsy candle business. Then the mobile spray tan van. Then something with drop-shipping toddler clothes. I lost track after that. Each time my parents rallied behind her. "She's just creative. She needs support. She's not like you, Casey. She wasn't built for the corporate world." No, she was built for handouts and excuses, and I had paid for both more times than I could count. The exit sign for the restaurant appeared ahead. 4 more miles. My fingers tapped anxiously on the steering wheel. Maybe I was built for the corporate world. Maybe I was good at structure and strategy and quarterly projections. But I wasn't heartless. I was just tired of pretending this was all okay. Tired of being the safety net while everyone else bounced freely. I had no childcare. No partner. No backup plan. Just a 6-figure job with 7-figure expectations and 2 children who deserved far better than to be treated like uninvited guests in their own grandparents' home. And the worst part. I still felt guilty for being angry. Still questioned whether I'd asked too much, if I'd raised my voice, if my tone had been too sharp when I pleaded. But then I remembered my daughter's face behind the curtain. No smile, no wave, just waiting. She had seen it all. And now? So had I? The house was quiet when I pulled into the driveway, too quiet for a place with 4 children inside. My heels clicked across the damp concrete as I approached the front door, tension building in my shoulders with every step. I reached for the handle, already imagining my daughter curled up on the couch with her tablet, my son asleep in his blanket fort like always. I pushed the door open. And froze. There in the dining room, Michelle's twin boys sat comfortably at the table, plates full of roasted chicken, green beans, and warm rolls. Real dishes. Cloth napkins. One even had a juice box standing upright beside his plate like some hotel amenity. Just a few feet away, on the living room floor, sat my kids, cross-legged on the rug, bent over soggy paper plates. Cold spaghetti clumped together, a fork stuck upright in the mess like a flag planted in defeat. No napkins, no drinks, no seats. I didn't move. My heart raced, but everything else inside me turned to ice. "Hey, you're back," Michelle called out from the kitchen island, lifting her glass. Her voice was syrupy sweet, but it had that edge, that steel she always kept tucked behind a smile. "Dinner's over. Hope your meeting went well." I stepped inside, eyes still locked on my kids. "Why are they on the floor?" I asked quietly, my voice steady only because it was frozen. "Oh, don't be dramatic," she said, waving a manicured hand. "There wasn't room at the table with all the kids, so we made space. It's not a big deal." "No room?" I had an 8-seater table. "They didn't even get juice," I said, still not raising my voice, still trying to understand how the people I loved could let this happen under my own roof. Michelle took another sip of wine. Maybe they should have thought about that before throwing a tantrum about eating spaghetti again. Mine eat what they're given. From the recliner, my father grunted. "You always get worked up over nothing, Casey." My mother didn't even look at me. She stood at the sink, humming softly, drying a pan like the world wasn't burning behind her. "They're kids," I said, barely above a whisper. "They're my kids." Michelle raised an eyebrow. "Exactly, not ours." That did it. I walked to the living room and knelt down beside them. My daughter looked up, eyes wide and glassy, a piece of cold pasta stuck to her lip. My son handed me his fork without a word. Neither had eaten much. "Come on," I said gently. "Let's go." "You're leaving?" Michelle asked, incredulous. "We saved you the rest of the wine." I didn't answer. I gathered the plates and dropped them in the sink, splattering sauce on the counter. My mother tusked behind me like I'd scratched her china. I wiped my hands slowly, then turned to face them all. My father looked bored. My mother looked inconvenienced. Michelle looked smug. And me, I was empty, not sad, not outraged, just done. I walked back to the kids, helped them into their jackets, and opened the front door. "Are you even going?" Michelle scoffed from behind me. "You want a medal for being dramatic." I didn't turn around, just said over my shoulder, calm as a storm on the edge of arrival, "Make sure your boys don't leave crumbs on the rug. I hear that's a big problem around here." I shut the door before she could respond. Out in the night, the rain had stopped. But inside me, something had only just begun. The next morning, sunlight poured through my office windows like nothing had happened. Birds chirped. The coffee brewed. My kids ate pancakes at the same table they had been denied the night before, and I sat at my desk, staring at my laptop screen. My home office was my sanctuary: white shelves, framed degrees, a view of our quiet Ohio cul-de-sac. Everything in this room existed because I built it, earned it, protected it. And yet somehow I had let people treat my children like guests in it. No more. I opened my banking app. 3 joint credit cards. One under my parents' names for emergencies. One for Michelle's business expenses. One household card I'd added them to years ago when Dad's credit tanked. Total monthly average I covered, just under $4,800, groceries, gas, unexpected repairs. Michelle's spa appointments cleverly labeled as wellness. I clicked the first card. Cancel authorized users. The screen asked, "Are you sure?" I didn't hesitate. Yes. The second card, same process. The third, done. 3 taps, 10 seconds. Years of silent enabling gone. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly. No yelling, no speech, no dramatic music, just the quiet click of accountability. My phone buzzed, then buzzed again, then began vibrating like it was possessed. Family group chat. Bitky's legacy face with rolling eyes. "Dad, card declined at Kroger." "What's going on, Michelle?" "Casey, I'm literally at the salon." "Mom, pharmacy just rejected mine." "Is this a mistake?" "Michelle, are you kidding me right now?" I took a sip of coffee before responding. "Michelle, answer your phone." "Dad, this better not be what I think it is." "Mom, sweetheart," I typed carefully. Calmly. "Casey, I removed authorized users from my accounts this morning." 3 dots appeared instantly. "Dad, you what?" "Michelle, you can't just do that." "Mom, over dinner seating." I stared at that last message for a long moment. Over dinner seating. That's what they thought this was about. I set my cup down and typed, "Casey, I guess now you'll know what it's like to have nothing served at the table." Silence. Then, "Michelle, you vindictive dad, after everything we've done for you." "Mom, this is humiliating. People are staring at us." I almost laughed at that. Humiliating. They were embarrassed over declined cards, but my kids sitting on the floor, that wasn't humiliating. I picked up my phone and hit record, not to post, not to threaten, just to document. "Dad called," I answered. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he barked before I could speak. "Nothing," I replied evenly. "I'm restructuring my finances." "You don't punish family like this. You don't treat children like second-class citizens." Silence on the other end, brief, sharp. Michelle grabbed the phone. I could hear the shuffle. "You think you're so powerful because you make more money," she snapped. "You're unbelievable over stupid dinner." "It wasn't about dinner." "Then what is it about, Casey?" "Control." "You always need control." I smiled slightly. "No, it's about balance." "You've lost your mind." "No," I said softly, "I've found it." I hung up. The chat kept exploding. Accusations, guilt, threats. I muted it. Then I opened a spreadsheet. If we were going to talk about family contributions, I wanted numbers ready. Because this time, I wasn't arguing from emotion. I was arguing from fact. And facts don't cry. It started with the sound of gravel crunching beneath worn tires. I looked up from my laptop, glanced through the blinds, and there they were. My parents' faded gray sedan pulled into the driveway like it was still welcome here. Michelle's SUV parked a little crooked behind them, her door already swinging open before the engine stopped. 2 days had passed since I canceled the credit cards. 2 glorious, quiet days. No group chat. No voicemails. No fake apologies. Just my children, my peace, and the growing clarity that I was done explaining myself to people who'd never really listened. But apparently, they weren't done with me. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. I didn't move to greet them. My mother was the first to speak. She always was. "Are you really going to ignore us like criminals?" she said, holding her purse tight to her chest like the drama had somehow followed her here. "You showed up uninvited," I replied calmly. "Were your parents Casey?" my dad cut in, voice rough. "This is ridiculous." Michelle followed them up the walkway, her expression twisted somewhere between embarrassment and defiance. She wore oversized sunglasses even though the sky was overcast and clutched a Starbucks cup like it was some kind of armor. "You're punishing us over a little seating arrangement," my mom asked, laughing bitterly. "You cut us off financially because your kids didn't sit at a table." There it was again. The line they'd all agreed on. The story they were spinning, dinner drama. I stepped out just far enough to let the screen door swing shut behind me. "This was never about chairs," I said, my voice low but even. "It's about how you looked at my kids and decided they didn't deserve the same respect as Michelle's." My father scoffed. "Don't be dramatic." "They were on the floor," I said, not blinking. "Paper plates, no juice," while hers had cloth napkins and second servings. "We didn't think they'd care," my mom murmured. "They're kids." "They noticed," I said. "And so did I." Michelle rolled her eyes. "It wasn't personal, Casey. You're always reading into everything like it's a crime scene." Honestly, they seemed fine, happy even. "You weren't even in the room," I snapped, the edge slipping out before I could stop it. "You were drinking wine and laughing at your phone while my son picked cold spaghetti off a paper plate on his knees." Michelle shrugged. "They're used to eating on the couch." "No, Michelle, they're used to love looking like fairness, respect, and what you showed them was something else entirely." My mom sighed, stepping closer. "Look, maybe we could have handled it better, but this cutting off our cards, the coldness, you've never been like this." "No," I said, "because I've always been quiet, generous, tired, too tired to speak up, but not anymore." Michelle muttered under her breath, all this over some imagined insult. "It wasn't imagined," I said sharply. "It was a message, and I heard it loud and clear." Dad folded his arms. "So what now? You think you're teaching us some lesson?" I looked at all three of them, my parents, aging and suddenly unsure of themselves, Michelle still convinced that smirking counted as strength. "I think I'm teaching myself what boundaries feel like," I said. "And you're not used to that because I've never had any with you." Mom looked away. Michelle kicked at a weed in the concrete. "You want back on my cards?" I asked. "You want access to the life I helped you maintain?" They looked up. "Then sit with me, apologize to my kids, and mean it." Silence, the kind that stretches into the marrow of people. "We're not going to grovel," my dad said finally. "I didn't ask you to grovel," I replied. "I asked you to see them, and until you can, you don't get to keep taking from me." I turned, walked back toward the door. Michelle scoffed. "You think this makes you noble? It makes you cruel, Casey." I paused. Then looked back just once. "No, it makes me a mother." And I closed the door. It wasn't rage that drove me to do it. Not revenge. Not spite, it was arithmetic. The same quiet logic I'd used to sort bills, plan meals, and make sure everyone had what they needed, long before anyone thought to ask if I did. And so, on a rainy Tuesday morning while the kids were at school and I had a break between calls, I made another. The hold music played gently in the background, a looping piano version of something meant to calm me. But I didn't need calming, I was calm, clear. "Thank you for holding," the rep finally said. "How can I assist you with your policy today?" "Yes," I said evenly. "I need to remove a dependent." She asked for the usual details, policy number, PIN, verification questions. I answered them all with professional precision. "And who would you like to remove from the plan?" "Michelle Bitkeys," I said. "My sister." There was a pause. "She's listed under your employer-sponsored premium coverage. Do you want to downgrade her to self-pay or terminate coverage entirely?" "Terminate, effective immediately." The rep's fingers clicked across a keyboard. "Noted, is there any reason for the cancellation for our records?" I hesitated, then smiled to myself. "She's pursuing other options." "Understood." Click, done. I closed the laptop and sat back, letting the quiet settle in. It wasn't vindictive, it was overdue. Michelle was 32, healthy, capable. She posted 3 times a week about self-care and boss vibes but hadn't held a job for more than 6 months in 5 years. I'd covered her health insurance ever since she let hers lapse, just for a little while after the second business failed. That little while had turned into 3 years and $7,200 in premium payments from my account. She never asked if I minded. I never said no. But silence, I've learned, is just unpaid consent, so I revoked it. The text came a week later on a Thursday evening as I was making dinner. Michelle, need to talk. Urgent. I didn't answer right away, just kept stirring the risotto. 10 minutes later, Michelle, I went to urgent care. They said my insurance was cancelled. Casey, what the hell? Then, Michelle, I'm sitting here in a paper gown with a migraine and they're telling me to pay out of pocket. You cancelled it, without warning. I let her simmer. She sent a photo of the intake form. Insurance, inactive, her handwriting on the line for responsible party. The next message was all caps. Did you even think about what this would do to me? I rinsed my hands, walked to the living room, sat down with my laptop, and typed a reply. Me, health insurance is for dependents. Me, not dependents who mock my children and drink wine while I work. No reply. I sent one more, a screenshot. A local job ad, front desk receptionist, wellness spa. Part-time, benefits after 60 days. Me, you'd better find a job, 3 dots, then nothing. The silence was its own kind of music. Maya called that night. Tell me you finally canceled her insurance. I did, I said. Maya whistled through the phone. Cold. Calculated, I corrected. It's different. Did she flip out? She's at urgent care. They turned her away unless she pays out of pocket. Maya laughed. Poetic. Then quieter. How do you feel? I thought about it. Not proud. Not guilty. Just aligned. Like the numbers on a spreadsheet finally added up. Like I was finally investing in someone who deserved it. Me. She'll land on her feet, I said. She always does, especially when someone else's back breaks the fall. This time, it wouldn't be mine. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing on the nightstand. It wasn't the family group chat this time. I had that muted indefinitely. It was Maya, already texting with a screenshot. Maya, she really went there. Below it, the image loaded. Michelle, perfectly angled in her car, tears glistening just enough to catch the sunlight through the windshield. Not a single lash out of place. Her caption read, "When your own sister cancels your health insurance without warning during a medical emergency. Broken heart betrayal hurts more when it's blood." Family isn't always family. Some people change. Stay strong. By the time I scrolled down, the comments were already piling in. At Wellness Kristen, OMG babe, I'm so sorry, you don't deserve this. At Tamra Fitmum, some people only help when it makes them feel superior. You're better off without that energy. At Madisonly, blood means nothing if they can't respect you, sending you strength. I let out a breath and tossed the phone onto the bed. It bounced once, landing face down, right where it belonged. Let her cry to strangers. Let her play the victim in curated lighting. Let her have her comment section therapy. I had my own agenda to move forward. At 11 a.m., I pulled into the driveway of my parents' house. The Bitke's family home. Beige siding, a cracked walkway, the same garden gnome that had been sun-faded since 2006. The house looked tired like the people inside it, and yet it still stood for something in their minds: legacy, ownership, control. But legally, it stood for something else. Mine. When I'd helped bail them out of foreclosure 6 years ago, I didn't just wire the money and call it a gift. I was younger then, but not stupid. I had insisted quietly, firmly on being added to the deed. 50%, black and white. I knocked once, then let myself in. My parents weren't home, and Michelle wasn't either. I had timed it that way. Cozy, said the woman beside me, tall, sharp suit, the kind of smile that didn't flinch. Dana, the realtor Maya had recommended. I liked her already. I led her through the kitchen, past the fridge still plastered with old family photos, to the outdated oak table where generations of decisions had been made, none of them in my favor. Dana laid the folder down and slid over the paperwork. This place has good bones, she said, eyes scanning the room. Outdated, yes, but in this neighborhood, you'll get attention, especially if you're motivated to sell. I met her gaze. I'm more than motivated, I said, tapping my pen once on the dotted line. Then again. Then finally signing. I'm ready, she smiled wider. Then it's time, I nodded, not triumphantly, not with anger, just with clarity. Let them learn what family really costs. The FOR sale sign went up on a breezy Thursday morning. I watched from my car as Dana's assistant hammered it into the front lawn. It looked almost delicate: white post, bold black lettering, cheerful little red arrow pointing toward the open house info. Neat, professional, unapologetic. A perfect match for me. By noon, the listing had gone live. Photos, square footage, charming fixer-upper in desirable neighborhood. Dana had even staged a few rooms herself, carefully cropping out the clutter my parents never got around to clearing. By 4, the fallout had begun. The email came first. Subject: unbelievable. It was from my mother, and CC'd to my father. The body of the message was one long paragraph, no greeting, no sign-off. "This is a disgrace, you have no right to do this to us. Your father is beside himself and I am absolutely sick over it. What you're doing is not normal. You need help, Casey, real help. We're considering legal action for emotional harassment and financial manipulation. You were added to the deed as a gesture of trust, not to turn around and sell our home from under us. This is your childhood home, for heaven's sake. Does that mean nothing to you anymore?" I stared at the screen for a moment, then calmly flagged it as read and archived it. No response. That was the most powerful answer I could give. I thought that might be the worst of it. But by sunset, Michelle arrived, and she didn't come quietly. I was in the middle of folding laundry when I heard the tires screech into the driveway. I didn't even have time to get to the window before the front door swung open and my daughter came running into the room. "Mom," she whispered, wide-eyed. "Aunt Michelle's outside, she's yelling." Of course she was. I stepped onto the porch, phone in hand, and there she was storming across my front lawn like a scandalized reality show contestant. "You think this is justice?" she shouted. "You think you're the moral one here?" I didn't say anything, just leaned against the doorframe and waited. "You're ruining everything." She continued, voice rising. "That house is our family's. You can't just sell it like it's a used purse you don't want anymore." A few neighbors poked their heads out. The retired couple across the street, the single dad jogging with his dog, Mrs. Feldman from next door peeking out from behind her curtains like it was a soap opera brought to life. Michelle didn't care, or maybe she did, and just needed the audience. "You think you're punishing us," she snarled, arms flailing, "but you're just exposing yourself. This is who you really are, a bitter, cold, selfish." "Michelle," I said calmly, "you're trespassing." That stopped her for half a second, then she started toward the porch. "You want to talk about betrayal?" she hissed. "You sold our home, ours, without telling anyone." "Correction," I said. "My half of the home, and I absolutely told you. Every action I've taken, I've given you a chance to respond. You just never thought the consequences would apply to you." Behind her, a second car pulled into the driveway. My father got out, face red, jaw tight. My mother stayed in the passenger seat, arms folded, lips pursed so tight they were nearly invisible. Dad marched up the lawn. "You think selling our home makes you righteous?" he growled, stopping at the bottom of the porch steps. "No," I said, meeting his gaze. "But it makes me free." He opened his mouth like he had more to say, but I cut him off. "You've called me dramatic, disrespectful, mentally unstable, and now you're worried about losing the house. I spent a decade helping you keep it. And you repaid me with silence when Michelle fed my kids on the floor like strays." My voice didn't rise. I didn't have to yell. The truth was loud enough. Michelle tried again. "Do you even care what people will say when they find out what you've done?" I looked around at the small crowd forming on the sidewalk, some pretending not to listen, most not bothering to hide it. "Let them watch," I said. "Let them hear it all." My father stepped back like I'd struck him. "We trusted you," he muttered. "No," I corrected. "You used me, and now you're mad the resource turned into a person." For a beat, no one said anything, just the faint sound of traffic in the distance, the hum of streetlights warming up. Then I turned and walked back into the house. I didn't slam the door, I didn't lock it dramatically. I just closed it, clean. Quiet, finished. Behind me on the porch, my daughter reached for my hand. "Are they mad at you?" she asked. I knelt down beside her. "They're mad at themselves," I said softly. "They just don't know it yet." 3 days passed, just enough time for the rage to burn through their group chats, for the performative outrage to lose its steam, for the silence to grow teeth. I knew they'd been stewing. Calls stopped, texts dried up, not even a passive-aggressive Instagram story from Michelle. That's how I knew the paperwork must have arrived. Eviction isn't a dramatic word when you understand real estate law. It's clinical, procedural, just a matter of notice, documentation, timelines. But it feels dramatic when it's delivered to a place you've always believed was untouchable. That Monday, an envelope arrived by courier and landed in the Bitke's family mailbox. Bold print, formal header, notice of partition and intent to sell. It stated clearly, unless the co-owners, my parents, were willing to buy out my 50% ownership of the home at fair market value within 30 days, The property would be sold through the court-supervised partition process. It wasn't personal, but it was real. No more threats. No more performative screaming on the lawn. Now there was just a countdown. I heard from Dana later that day. She'd driven by to place the open house signage and saw the letter still crumpled in the mailbox. No one had the courage to take it inside yet, she said. But they saw it. Michelle was peeking through the curtains. That night I sat alone on my back porch, nursing a cup of lemon tea, watching my kids chase fireflies in the yard when my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number, but I didn't need to guess. You really sent a courier, like this is some courtroom drama. No greeting. No name, just Michelle. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She followed up with, "Mom's been crying. Dad hasn't left the bedroom. They said they never thought you would go this far." Still, I stayed silent. That night I imagined the house. My childhood home. Rooms I used to tiptoe through on Christmas Eve, walls I once traced with crayon lines I swore weren't mine. I could see them in there. Frozen. Michelle in her old bedroom, still painted blush pink from when she turned 17 and decided she was too good for lavender. Her door locked, her sobs muffled behind it. My mother, pacing the kitchen with a glass of Chardonnay that now tasted more like dread than celebration. My father, sitting in his recliner in the living room, blinds drawn, TV off, staring blankly at a family photo from a time when I still said yes to everything. The house was quiet now. But it wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of quiet that comes after denial cracks. The kind that fills the air when no one's brave enough to say the one word that could change everything. Apologize. But they wouldn't, not yet. They were still waiting for me to come back to my senses, to undo what I'd done. They hadn't accepted that this was my sense. This was me choosing not to explain anymore. This was me telling them, without yelling, without threats, without tears, that I wasn't afraid to lose a house if it meant I could reclaim myself. They still thought this was about a dinner. They didn't see the decade leading to the door, but now they had 30 days to figure it out. Tick, tick, day 29. The sun rose too bright that morning, casting long shadows across the cracked walkway of the Bitkeys' home. The same walkway where I used to chalk hopscotch squares as a child, now freshly swept, likely by my mother's hands, her last attempt to keep up appearances. But no amount of sweeping could erase what was coming. Dana pulled up in her sleek silver car at 9:00 sharp, heels clicking confidently on the sidewalk. She wore her signature navy blazer, clipboard in hand, sunglasses pushed to the top of her head like a silent crown. "We'll keep it tight. First round of buyers is stacked, 4 appointments before noon." I nodded, not smiling. Across the street, my parents were already standing on the lawn, not their own anymore, not for much longer. My mother clutched her robe tighter despite the growing heat. My father stood like a statue, arms folded across his chest, eyes narrowed like he was bracing for war but too tired to fight it. Michelle, she was the last to appear. She stepped out the front door slowly, mascara streaked like lightning bolts across her face. No phone in her hand, no smug expression, just panic. The kind that settles into your bloodstream when you realize it's too late to perform your way out of consequences. "You wouldn't actually do this," she said, her voice hoarse, barely above a whisper. She looked thinner or maybe just smaller. "I already am," I replied. The first couple pulled up, a pair in their early 40s, professionally dressed, smiling politely as they stepped onto the walkway. Dana greeted them like this was just another Saturday. Michelle rushed forward. "Wait, please," she said, breath catching. "You can't, there are still pictures in there, my boys' old toys. My high school yearbooks." "Then you should have packed them when I sent the notice," I said flatly. She blinked. "We didn't think it would get this far." "No," I said, "you didn't think I would let it." Behind me, Dana unlocked the door and ushered the couple inside. The hallway echoed with their footsteps, echoed like it hadn't in years, now that the rugs had been rolled up and the voices of ownership were no longer welcome. My father stepped closer, barely restraining his frustration. "This is humiliating," he snapped. "No," I said, "this is justice." "For what?" he barked. "For asking you to be less controlling, for reminding you you're not the center of the family." I turned to him fully, voice level. "For letting Michelle treat my kids like burdens, for staying silent while your grandchildren were fed on the floor, for making me believe I owed this family everything and was worth nothing in return." Michelle's lower lip trembled. "We're your family." "You were," I said. Another car pulled up, this time a younger couple with a baby in a carrier. Michelle's voice cracked. You're really going to sell it, our home, the only thing that holds this family together? I looked her in the eye. You left my children on the floor, I said. Now you're in the dirt. And with that I turned and walked toward the front door. The breeze shifted, the neighbors watched. No one spoke. Inside, I smiled and welcomed the new couple. Come on in, I said warmly. It's a great house, just needs new energy. The morning the trucks arrived, no one came to stop them. Not Michelle, not my father, not even my mother, though I'd half expected her to fling herself across the porch in protest, arms spread like a martyr guarding a shrine. But when the first box hit the lawn with a dull thud, the only sound was the steady beep of the moving van backing into the driveway. It was surreal, watching strangers in uniforms carry out the past like it was debris. Michelle's velvet throw pillows, the vintage globe my father swore was worth thousands, but had always tilted slightly to the left. Even their clunky old treadmill that had become more of a coat rack than an exercise tool. Each item landed on the grass like punctuation. A framed family portrait, set gently beside a box labeled Holiday Lights. A pink duffel bag that still had Michelle's college initials monogrammed on it, stacked beneath a plastic bin of old DVDs no one had watched in a decade. By 10 a.m., the entire front lawn looked like a sidewalk sale of broken history. The Bitke's family home had been gutted, physically, emotionally, legally. I stood on the sidewalk, arms folded, sunglasses on. Dana had warned me that they might try something today. A last-minute plea. A last-ditch tantrum. But so far nothing. Until the silver sedan pulled up. Michelle stepped out first, her face blotchy from crying, her hair a frizzy mess that didn't match her usual curated aesthetic. She didn't scream this time, she just stared, silent, shell-shocked. Then came my father, his expression rigid, not angry, not wounded, just blank, like someone who'd finally run out of words. Are you proud of this? He asked, voice flat. I didn't answer. He gestured toward the lawn. Of turning your family into a public spectacle. You did that, I replied calmly. I just stopped cleaning up the mess. He shook his head, looked away. Michelle knelt beside a box marked bathroom upstairs, opening it slowly as if she still didn't believe this was real. Her hand trembled as she pulled out a half-used bottle of conditioner. Where are we even supposed to go? She whispered. I didn't flinch. I gave you 30 days. You know she's pregnant, my father said suddenly, like that fact was some kind of legal exemption from consequence. I turned to him, voice quiet but final. She knew that when she told my daughter to eat on the floor. That shut him up. The movers finished by noon, loading the last labeled bin onto the lawn with the care they would for any client. But this wasn't just a move. It was an eviction, a reckoning, a transfer of power. They stood there for a few minutes longer, like they were waiting for the house to change its mind. For me too, but I didn't. I turned, walked back inside, closed the door. That night I drove past the house one more time just to see. The porch light flickered weakly. No movement inside. But on the curb, 2 tents had been pitched, cheap camping gear pulled from the garage in desperation. One was gray, sagging in the middle. The other, smaller, lit faintly from inside like someone was scrolling through their phone. Neighbors walked their dogs slower than usual. Conversations hushed as they passed. Children pointed. Adults gave each other looks they didn't think anyone saw. The Bitke's family, once hosts of block parties, once praised for their pristine lawn and matching patio chairs, were now that house. That family. The scandal no one could stop talking about, but everyone pretended to pity. And me? I drove on in silence, window cracked open just enough to let in the cool air. Not to gloat. Not to celebrate. But to breathe, because for the first time in years I could. It was a quiet Wednesday morning when the doorbell rang. No text ahead of time. No warning. I almost didn't answer. Part of me expected a delivery or maybe another clipboard-clutching neighbor trying to ask, without asking, about the tents that had disappeared from the Bitke's lawn 2 days earlier. But when I pulled back the curtain, it was Michelle. Alone. No dramatic entrance. No sunglasses. No phone in her hand ready to record a TikTok takedown. She stood small on my porch in an oversized hoodie and jeans too wrinkled to be planned. Her hair was pulled into a loose bun that hadn't seen a mirror. Her expression was empty, but not manipulative, just tired. I opened the door slowly. You lost. Her lips parted, but no joke came. No snark, just a small, shaky, "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. She walked in like someone unfamiliar with gravity. Shoulders hunched, hands in her sleeves. She looked around my kitchen like it had grown unfamiliar. I haven't had coffee in 2 days, she said, almost to herself. I pointed to the kettle. Sit. She did. I poured 2 cups in silence. No sugar, no creamer, just black. The way we drank it before life and bitterness took their places in different mugs. When I slid her the cup, she curled both hands around it like it was the warmest thing she'd touched in weeks. I slept in my car the last 2 nights, she said quietly. Trevor found out I was pregnant and said he wasn't ready for fatherhood, packed up and moved in with some girl from his gym. I didn't say I told you so, I just nodded once. She looked up at me, eyes rimmed in pink but dry now. You were right. I let the words sit there. Float, then, about what? All of it, she said. The way I've been, how I treated your kids, how mom and dad always made me think I deserved more. Or that if I didn't, you'd cover the difference. She stared into the cup, her voice flat. It's like I've lived my whole life expecting someone else to pull the parachute. I didn't interrupt, she took a breath. When I saw our stuff on the lawn, it wasn't the furniture or the clothes that hurt. It was realizing no one, not even me, expected consequences. I thought you'd yell, freeze me out, but I didn't think you'd follow through. I nodded again. That scared me, she whispered. Not because it was cruel, because it was fair. We sat in silence. My coffee cooled, hers stayed untouched. When she finally looked up again, her face was stripped of performance, just real, raw. I can't fix everything, she said. But I want to fix something, start somewhere, even if it's small. I watched her for a long moment. Then stood, walked to the drawer and pulled out a folded document, the sale contract. I set it on the counter between us. I haven't signed it, I said. Yet. Her eyes flicked down, then up, hope barely formed. I paused it because I needed to know this was real, I added. This conversation, not a trick, not a delay, just real. Michelle nodded slowly. It is. Then we'll see what happens next, I said. But understand this, Michelle, there's no going back to before, not with them, not with me. I know. She stood slowly, took a deep breath, and glanced at the door. Thank you for the coffee, and for not slamming the door in my face. You get one, I said. Don't spend it twice. She nodded. And for the first time in years, she didn't try to hug me. She just walked out the door, quiet, and left the truth behind her. 6 months later, the house feels different. Not because the walls are new, they're still the same off-white, still slightly scuffed in the corners. The floors still creak in the hallway after midnight, and the screen door still squeals if you don't tug it just right. But the air inside it, that's changed. There's laughter in the kitchen that doesn't sound forced. There's silence that no longer feels like punishment. And the dining table, my 8-seater, the one that once became a battleground for respect, is full. My kids sit beside Michelle's. Elbows bump, juice spills, someone giggles at a story about school. No one is on the floor, no one is left out. Michelle helps set the table now. She brings her own groceries. She never asks for money. She works 2 part-time jobs. One of them is front desk at a spa, the same listing I once sent her as a warning. Now she talks about her clients like she's found something steady for the first time in her life. My parents still live here too. The deed was restructured, my terms, signed in ink. They know where the line is now. And this time they know it's not theirs to cross. They still sigh sometimes. Still mumble about how things used to be, but they also wash dishes. They also thank me. And sometimes they even thank my kids. We eat dinner as a family once a week. No hierarchy, no jabs, no one commands the room, just presence. Real, imperfect, honest presence. Tonight I pass the salad bowl down the line and tap my glass with a spoon. New rules, I say, smiling. 1, everyone clears their own plate. My daughter grins, even Grandpa. Especially Grandpa, I say. He groans playfully, but he gets up first. Michelle looks across the table at me, not with envy, not with rivalry, just gratitude. And I nod, because this didn't come from revenge, not really. It came from drawing a line and meaning it, from refusing to let love become a transaction, from understanding that family isn't about blood, it's about behavior. We finish dinner, we clear our own plates. And for once, no one is beneath anyone. That was the end of the story. I keep thinking about the moment Michelle finally showed up at my door alone, exhausted and honest for the first time in her life. And I wonder, did she do the right thing by swallowing her pride and taking responsibility, or would you have handled it differently in her place? Tell me in the comments if you think she did the right thing, and if this story meant something to you, please like this video and subscribe. Because sometimes the hardest part of healing a family is deciding who's brave enough to take the first step.